Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are live here on Facebook for another virtual author event. We're really excited tonight to have John Gilstrap and Reavis Wortham with us. Let me introduce them to you briefly in case you're not familiar. Reavis Z. Wortham is the critically acclaimed author of the Red River Mysteries, set in rural North Texas in the 1960s. As a boy, he hunted and fished the river bottoms near Chakota, the inspiration for his fictional location. He's also the author of a thriller series featuring Texas Ranger Sonny Hawk. He teaches writing at a wide variety of venues, including local libraries and writers' conferences. He's been a newspaper columnist and magazine writer since 1988 and has been the humor editor for Texas Fish and Game magazine for the past 22 years. He and his wife, Shauna, live in North Texas. You can check out his website at reviszwortham.com. Tonight, he's going to be chatting with us about his newest Sonny Hawk book, Hawk's Fury, that just came out a couple weeks ago. And we're also happy to have John Gilstrap with us. He is the New York Times bestselling author of more than 14 novels, including the acclaimed Jonathan Graves thrillers. Against All Enemies won the International Thriller Writers Award for Best Paperback Original. His books have been translated into more than 20 languages worldwide. An expert in explosive safety and a former firefighter, he holds a master's degree from the University of Southern California and a bachelor's degree from the College of William and Mary. He lives in Virginia, and you can learn more at his website, johngilstrap.com. Tonight, he's going to be talking to us about his newest Jonathan Graves thriller, Hellfire. How are y'all doing tonight, gentlemen?
I'm doing great.
Yes, just doing just fine.
And for the record, that phone was not a cell phone. It was the home phone, okay? So...
you know what? Thank you, John. I'm going to kill mine. It's on stun now.
Yeah, that makes me feel better. It feels like I'm back in the store after I've just told everybody to silence their phones and one will inevitably go off. So it's been, I don't know, 115 days since I've had that experience. So thank you for that. If you guys are tuning in with us on Facebook right now, if you have any questions for either author, you can leave them in the Facebook comments. I'm going to be watching the comments and relaying to those in just a little bit. I am going to pop away and turn it over to you guys, and I'll let you chat, and I will see you in a little bit.
All right.
That can be dangerous, let me tell you. When John and I get together, we don't know where we're going or what we're going to say, but we have fun at it. We've toured before. This is the first Zoom we've done, but we've toured live a few times, and it was always a hoot.
This is the first time I've ever been on a book event with you, and you don't have the damn hat. There you go. There you go.
Is that better?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
it tells everybody who the Texan is, in case there was a doubt.
There you go. There you go. John and I, we got into this at different times. John was in the writing business much faster than I was, and he had a career that spanned what now, 20 something years, John?
25.
25 years, yeah. And you started with your standalones, and then you did a nonfiction book, and then you moved. That's where you got the basis for your Jonathan Graves.
Yeah. I mean, the standalone books did really well. Nathan's Run was my first one. It's about a 12-year-old boy who would now be 36, 37 if he was a real guy, which is kind of terrifying, right? And then, I ran into this fellow named Kurt Muse who had this terrific story, a real life story about being rescued by Delta Force out of Panama in December of 1989. And a story had never been written, and I ended up writing it with him, and it gave me access to the covert world, a lot of different covert worlds. It was, at the time, it was the only book that Delta Force had ever participated in, and that took literally a presidential order to make that happen. So having that kind of access and that kind of research, Jonathan Graves, who's a former Delta operator and a freelance hostage rescue specialist, it seemed like a natural thing. So, and you, how long did you change? How long was your Red River series running around in your head before you actually committed it to paper?
Oh my Lord! It started in about 1999, 98. I started working on that, and it took a while because if you've never tried to write a novel, that first novel is hard to figure out. You have to do all the detail work. You have all this information you want to dump in there. and you usually don't have the time to sit down and write. You have a career, a job, and so it took several years for me. Well, from '99, I wrote it, got it finished in about 2002, and then my computer hiccuped, and I lost the entire manuscript because no one had told me about backing them up on anything but a floppy disk. Yeah, and so I had to rewrite the entire novel again from scratch, and so that started just a few months later, and then I picked at it, worked at it a little bit until finally I sold the manuscript in 2010. But John, before we get too far off, now your first novel, Nathan's Run, has been re-released, and everybody needs to know that they can get that.
It did, yes. It came out either December or January, just 6 months ago. It was re-released for its 25th anniversary. And one of the big mistakes it wasn't a mistake, a choice that I made early on. There was a lot of really foul language in the original book. It came out in 1995. And actually the publishing world was different, so much different in 1995. And I got so much mail from initially letters and then later emails from fans who were saying, I wish I could share this. 12-year-old boy is the protagonist. I wish I could share this with my kids. I wish I could share this with my mother. But the language won't allow me to do that. And so Kensington, a publisher, said, okay. So they re-released it, and in my version, it also has my original ending. I allowed myself to be talked out of my original ending back in 1995, and I have regretted it ever since. And now I've made it right.
Isn't that the truth? My first novel, The Rock Hole, is being re-released in October. And it'll be almost 10 years before that. And I had the opportunity to go back and fix a few things. Your first novel is not quite right. But any of these books in my office, I can guarantee the author would pick it up and say, I need to change that in that novel. But I was able to change a few things in that one. My second novel, Burroughs, is going to be re-released in the future here soon. And I'm going to reinstate a chapter that they had.
Are you going to put it back in?
Put it back in. Yeah. And that's going to be fun. Burroughs is about as dark as it gets. Somebody said it was like Harper Lee meets Stephen King. And I had to take out a chapter that was supposedly too intense for the book. And I think that chapter needs to go back in there. So I'm going to draw, if I can find it. When you cut it out, you got to go find it again. And so I think I still have it on a disc somewhere.
Now, did you think The Rock Hole was going to be a series, or did you think it was going to be a standalone when you?
No. The Rock Hole was going to be just my one standalone. I wanted to write a book. Everyone says I have a book in me, and that was mine. I wanted to get it written, and so I wrote the novel and sent it to my publisher. And then I met with him, my editor, and she had two other than common edits. She had two caveats. Number one, she told me you have to cut out 50,000 words because it was 140,000 words.
50,000, 50,000.
Yeah.
A little indulgent, were you?
Yeah. Well, I had a lot in there. Well, I cut out 40. So that I did that. And then she said I had to rewrite the ending. And I said, why? And she told me that they wanted to make this a series, not just a standalone novel. And then I was going to get to flesh the characters out and go on through the years from 1964 until I get tired of writing about the Red River series in Northeast Texas in the 1960s. So,
well, I've told you before that I think that as your characters get older with each year, but I really think, I'm a huge fan of your work. I think you should go back and fill in spaces between stories. You have sort of this infinite canvas that you can work on.
I think that's what I'm going to do. The latest that came out, that's coming out in January, Laying Bones, is in 1969. And I don't want to get out of the 60s. So I'm going to take your advice and do that and go back and drop in between the stories that I have, because right now it's just consecutive year after year. But at the moment, I'm working on a number of novels because we're all locked into the house, or not manuscripts. We're locked in the house and can't get out. And so I was working on 4 different manuscripts at one time. And one of them is set in 1932. And it brings back one of my favorite characters and shows his backstory. Tom Bell is in East Texas as a young Texas Ranger dealing with the oil boom in East Texas. So I think my fans are going to really like that a lot. But you've got Hellfire out now, man. There it is. And wait a minute, how did it debut? Tell us about that. It debuted as?
Well, it might have debuted very well. It debuted #1 on Amazon in terrorist thrillers and political thrillers. And
Yeah, might have.
Not that I check these things obsessively, but it's done very well. So in 2 days, there's plenty of time for it to get into trouble. Now, Hellfire is a story. It's the 12th adventure in the Jonathan Graves series. And for those who are watching, I'm very careful to write these books that they will work as standalones. But for those who have been with the series the whole time, there's also Easter eggs in each of them that'll make it work. But one of the things about Jonathan, he is a freelance hostage rescue specialist, and he is a former Delta operator, special forces operator. But he's also a philanthropist. And his number one cause is a place called Resurrection House, which is the school that he finances for the children of incarcerated parents, which quite honestly is, I think it should be a thing. It seems like a good idea. It's also great fodder for fiction because each of these kids has a past. But the book opens when two brothers who are being transported to Resurrection House are kidnapped along the way. So it makes this particular hostage rescue very special and very personal to Jonathan. And the cartels are involved. And if there are thriller writers who focus on the Islamic terrorism and all that, and that's fine. Great stories to be told. I personally think that the drug cartels are the single most dangerous scourge, certainly in the Western Hemisphere. And so I tend to deal a lot with that. And in this case, the cartels are involved. It turns out the boy's mother is scheduled to testify against one of the cartel leaders, and that's what everybody assumes is the purpose for the kidnapping, is to keep mom quiet. But what we uncover is a far darker issue than the transportation of drugs across the border. It's the transportation of really, really nasty stuff across the border. So it's Jonathan and Boxers and Venice and that whole crowd of the Jonathan Graves series. It must be like you and the Rock and the Red River series. Those are my friends. You sit down and you play with your imaginary friends, and it's just, I know them well, and it's a great experience. And this year, I just finished a book that is going to be the first in a second series. So I'm going to be doing two series books a year, at least for the foreseeable future. That is entirely different. And what a challenge to suddenly have to write something that is brand new. I don't think the Grave series has made me lazy, but it's easier because I know the world. Mm-hmm. This is the first time in over a decade that I've had to create something that is truly original. And I think, that was me knocking wood, I think I pulled it off, and I'm pleased with the result, but man, was that a different experience.
And you did pull it off. For those that don't, John and I trade manuscripts back and forth, and I've read Hellfire, and I've read his new series also. And I know that when he sends me that manuscript, and I print it out on paper, I can't read on the screen. I have this ream of paper that I go sit at my desk or sit on my chair, and I know that as soon as I get into that story, I'm not going to work until I finish the book. It's just, that's how good they are. And not very many authors will capture me in the same way. But I know what you're talking about because I wrote those Red River books for so long. And then our agent, John and I share an agent. She said, I need for you to write something else. Let's try something in a thriller or a vein. And I don't really write thrillers as John does, but I did my own version of a Texas Ranger thriller. And I created the Sonny Hawk series, my Texas Ranger, who lives down in Big Bend area of Texas. And he is the old fashioned one ranger, one riot, one ranger. But he also is one of those guys that is very, he doesn't think things through sometimes. He knee jerks. And so he will, in the course of dealing with the issues, and as in Hawk's Fury, the cartels that are coming across the border and killing border patrol agents and killing other people and trying to open up a pipeline for drugs. Sonny winds up going to down around Laredo in that area and talking to some people and finding out that he has an informant across the river over in Mexico. And so he crosses the border legally. He goes across over there, leaves his guns and everything else, even though he can carry them.
How does that work for him?
Well, yeah, that doesn't go well at all because, with Sonny, he winds up getting in the middle of a running gunfight. And before you know it, he's a cartel leader's house and taking her back, as in a way that most people would say would not be the best way to do it, but he takes her into custody. And then he's got to get back across the border while being chased by her people and some of the more sinister people that work in the Mexican army. And so I think it's a roller coaster ride. I think it starts off and you get to the top, and once you get to the top, you just need to hang on because by the time they get back to the border, there's nothing to stop the car once you get across the border.
More than when you get, it's like after I've read this. After you go over and you think you've had the big plunge. No. That's the one that the big plunge is way ahead.
Yeah. And that's what I hoped for. And it is really tough. I didn't make any of the Amazon lists like some people that I know named John Gilstrap. However, it went into a second. Okay. All right. There you go. There you go. It did go into a second printing well before release time. So we were really thrilled about that. And if you like blue, there you go, man. It's just Hawks Fury. I had a lady, I did a book club meeting in East Texas, a live one. Everybody was spaced out and everything. But one of the ladies said, I really like that cover. And sweet little lady, she goes, that's the kind of Ranger I'd like to save me. So these are out now, and we're doing these virtual tours, but at the same time, there's a lot more going. Once you get a book out, you don't stop. You're working on the next book in some way, and I think that's what you're doing, isn't it, John?
Yeah, and I want to tell a story on you, and I don't think I've told you this story, so be nervous. Reavis and I first met in Florida.
In Florida,
whatever that Florida conference is.
No, Sleuthfest.
Sleuthfest,
yeah.
And I'd never seen him before, and he was a cowboy in a bar, and he never moved. He was nursing either the same scotch or 4 scotches. I'm not sure which. And so I finally sat down and we kind of hit it off, and we were kind of buddies from the very beginning.
Yes, we were.
And I've been to 1,000 conferences. I've actually this is my 21st book that just came out, so I've been doing this for a long time. And sat and Reavis and I had a good time. I gave him some career advice. We did, and there's that moment where I said, do you mind? Would you share one of your manuscripts with me? And he did. He sent it to me. And there's a moment, it doesn't matter if you're an author or if you're a carpenter, whatever it is. If you're a craftsman and somebody else is showing you their craft and you like them, the first thing you think is, oh dear God, don't let it suck. Just let me have something positive to say. And it was the rock hole. And I got so sucked into the story. And it was like, whoa, this is really good. Thank God. It's really
I appreciate it. There is that fear in there.
Yeah,
there is, because you're friends with these folks and you want to read their stuff. And John and I have a lot of writer friends. They've sent us some stuff. And I go, okay, yeah, good luck with it. But it worked out for us, and in several different ways. John and I, we sat there that night. We closed the bar down for the first bar we ever closed down, and there've been many ever since. But we've been running. We have a term here in Texas called running buddy. And you running buddy is somebody that you go out with and you have run around with, you go to parties with, and you go places with. He's your partner. And so John and I become running buddies pretty quickly. And then our wives met, and the wives liked each other.
Yeah.
Now there was a fear right there too. And the wives are great. Now we vacation together. Back when we could vacation, John and I will be doing some things for books or whatever, and the girls would disappear, and they'll send us text messages or photos of what they're doing. And sometimes they're having drinks, and other times they're waving credit cards around. So they're having a great time too.
Often those two, one leads to the other. One way to the other. Not only have we closed bars together, in Colorado Springs, there was a left coast crime, right? Mm-hmm. Where it went from 70 degrees to snowing.
Oh, that was a great night.
2 hours. Remember, they actually rolled the bar away.
They took it away from
on a cart and they rode it away.
Yeah. It was me and you and a guy named Craig Johnson that writes some Longmire stuff.
Yeah, he does. He writes Westerns, right?
Yeah, I think he writes Westerns.
Okay,
And
yeah.
I think Deaver was.
I understand he's got a shot at a good career.
He has a really shot. If he just hangs on and keeps playing it, I think he's going to do it. And Sandra Brandon was there with it. Lou Diamond Phillips was.
That's right. Lou Diamond Phillips.
He dropped by, and so we were all. And that was when I was trying to come up with the Sunny Hawk. I outlined it in my head. And we're all sitting in this huge hotel in Colorado Springs. The wind's howling outside, snow's piling up, and they taken the bar away from us at 2:00 in the morning. So we're all visiting and talking,
and dressed for 70 degrees.
Oh yeah, because we weren't expecting that at all. No, it was one of those freak storms, and everybody's talking about writing, and someone looks at me and said, "Well, Rev, what are you working on?" And I gave them the synopsis for my first Sunny Hawk novel, and everybody thought that was a great. They blessed it. Everybody there, and there are a lot of best-selling authors that I didn't name, but there are a lot of people there. Everyone blessed it and said, "This is great." And so I came back and pitched it to my agent, and she thought it was probably the worst idea she'd ever heard. So I had to come up with something different. But it worked out because Sunny Hawk, in the form that I had him, was born there. And like you said, you have to create an entire world on paper or on a screen out of whole cloth. You sit down, you put your fingers on the keys, and you have to make backstories up and everything else. I don't know. I know how some writers do it. I don't take notes. I don't outline. I just start following my characters, and mine worked for me. But when you started Jonathan Gray, there was some struggle there for you for a little while, I think, wasn't there, John?
Oh yeah, that the initial manuscript was 140,000 words, I think. And I sent it to my agent, who had been my agent for a long time at that point, and we're friends. And she called me, I think it was on a Saturday, and she said, "Oh dear God, my eyeballs are bleeding. You have to shorten this book."
Well, how many words was it?
140.
140. So you get on to me about 150, 140.
I was, but that's way longer than 140.
You know
so
what?
What's interesting is I was able to cut out that. I think it came in at about 115, 120. So I was able to cut out that 20,000 words. It was a backstory kind of thing that was happening, and it reduced to a paragraph. I covered that territory in a single paragraph.
And that's what people don't understand about writing is you throw a lot in there that really is not necessary in the long run. When I cut all that out of mine, one of the things that I did is attributes. He said, she said. You wipe all that out, and then you go in and you dig the adverbs out, because Stephen King says the road to hell is paved with adverbs. So I go dig all of those out and recreate the sentences. And I still do that now. When I get to the end of the manuscript, I go back to that and I tighten it all up, and it reads, and you can't tell that you took all that out of there.
Right.
Yep. You can't do it.
And I think one of the things, normally I have no idea who's in the audience or if anybody's in the audience in this case, but oftentimes you have people who are aspiring writers or struggling writers, and I will tell you, and tell me if you agree, it never gets easier. The only variable that changes is confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Once you kind of cross the threshold, then you think, okay, if I did it once, I can do it again. But there's never a time that you're not ready to go and rewrite the whole friggin' book. And the reason you submit it is it's really good. I mean, I'm not going to submit crap.
Right.
But there's always another 2 degrees of goodness, but the deadline is now. And
that's true.
And I think that's the way for everyone. And I find you go to various conferences, and if you are a fledgling writer, go to conferences once we can leave our houses again. I don't care who you are. We've had drinks with Lee Child and Jeff Deaver, and pick Mike Connelly, whoever the case may be. It's the same. Every single writer says the same thing. So if in fact you think you're in a unique position because the words aren't going on the page the way you want them to, no, you're doing your job.
Yeah, you have to work at it, and some days come easy, some days don't. Some days you have to go mow the lawn and deal with the kids or grandkids, but you always have to carve out enough time to write a little bit. And that's what and I'm pretty blunt about it. So if people tell me, I'm going to write, I'm writing a book. Well, how long have you been working on it? 15 years. You're not writing a book. Put your butt in the seat and write the book, and get it down. And then you've written something. I have a goal every day, just a goal of 1,000 words per manuscript. if I'm working on more than one. Some days I get that, some days I don't. But you have to sit down and write every day to keep it polished. But and a lot of folks will tell me, well, I'm going to wait until I retire, or I've got a family, or I can't do it. Yeah, you can. If you really want to write, you can sit at a stoplight and scribble things down. You can come home, and if you can pick up this thing and check Facebook and all that other crap, you can write. It's pretty simple. But and then once you get your manuscript done, then you have to find an agent. And I think that was the hardest part for me is really getting in. John met me the day I met my first agent, and I had talked to her, and then she came and sat at the table with us for a little while, and then when it was all over with, she left, and John said, "Can I give you a little advice?" And here I am talking to a veteran author, bestseller. I said, "Well, sure. What do I need to do?" He goes, "You need to fire your agent." just fire her now. I said, "What? Yeah, I've been working so hard to get somebody to look at me." He goes, "You just need to fire your agent because she's not what you need. She's not good, and she's not going to help you out." And it took me a while to do it. I did not fire her that first year. I actually fired her after she blew a movie deal for the Rock Hole. And then I fired her. I called John, and he was ecstatic. I told you to do it months ago. I said, "Yeah, I know, but sometimes I'm a little hard-headed."
But it's only $1 million. It's only a movie deal. What's $1 million?
It's only millions of dollars, and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, if you do get your manuscript finished, and you're looking for an editor or an agent, and I recommend that you go to writers' conferences. They're all over the country. Find one close to you, and then go in and register, go to the sessions, and then do what John and I do. John, what do we do when we go to these things?
We hang out at the bar.
We hang out at the bar, yeah.
Because 100% of all business in this industry is conducted in the bar. Absolutely. So, I mean, if people who go to bed early, so that fans, that's different. People who really want to hear their favorite author speak and all that, that's great. But for people who are trying to progress their careers, who are getting up for the 8 o'clock session and then going to bed at 8:30, so that readjust the day. 100% of all business is conducted in the bar. And while you're in the bar, be sure to sit with the crowd you want to belong to or belong with.
That's true. Yeah.
What happens is these rookies hang out with each other, and which makes no sense to me at all. That's not what you would do if you're a lawyer, or if you're trying to get a job in a real job, a big boy job. You market, and you network, and you talk to the places where you want to belong. You don't hang out with the other folks who are all trying to figure out, where to send their resumes.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And it's kind of daunting. You go and you sit down at table in these areas, and there's writers around there, and all of a sudden you start realizing this is this guy sitting over here, and this is a best-selling. Oh my gosh, I've been reading him or her for years. And if you're shy, you're not going to get anywhere. So go sit down with it. And to a person in all these conferences, John, I don't think I've ever seen a writer turn away a first conference attendee. I don't think they've ever done that. We all ask you to come sit down. We'll visit with you a little bit, and you can pick their brains. Now, don't go fanboy or fangirl on them, because that's embarrassing. But just sit down and talk to them, just like we're doing now, and they will be more than happy to visit with you.
And don't start pitching your book right away.
Oh, don't pitch your book to no. Never pitch your book.
Tell your story. Obviously, you're not going to name names, but tell your story about the literary agent out on the patio.
Oh, yeah. That was one of those things. I didn't know how to do any of this. I didn't even know about writers' conferences until my publisher and my agent said, "We want you to come to Sleuth Fest in Florida and meet us and talk contract." And so I flew out there. I didn't know what a writers' conference was, but I found out pretty quickly. And we were there, 3 or 4 days, I think. Mm-hmm. And in the course of one day, I went to get away from everything, just to sit and think. And I went and sat down by the swimming pool at the hotel. And there was an agent that was there, and she was talking to people. She was doing presentations. She was
one of the headliners.
She was the headliner. Yeah. And there were people all around her. And so, and I'm not the guy to run up and just start talking to you, but I was out there, and she was there, and I'm sitting at a table, and she came out and fired up a cigarette several tables over. And she was talking to somebody on the phone. Then she hung up. I said, if you'd like to come over and sit with me, I'd love to talk to you. And she said, no, thank you. And I said, look, I'm not going to pitch to you. I have an agent. I am not going to talk to you about my books. I would just like to talk about the industry. And she finally came over and sat, and we talked for probably an hour. And then by the time the conversation's over, she said, well, what's your book about? And I said, well, no, I told you I wasn't going to pitch. And she goes, oh, just tell me about it. I said, no, not really. I just want to visit with you and make friends with you and understand the business. And for the entire conference, every time she saw me, she would ask me to come over here and let's talk about your book. Maybe I can help you. I said, I have an agent. Thank you. And to this day, when I see her at conferences, she will come over and she said, are you going to talk to me yet? I said, not yet. Because I told her I wasn't going to pitch to her. And I liken it to fishing. I don't know if a lot of you don't, if you fish, you throw a lure out there on the water and it slaps the top of the water and you let it sit there and it just kind of floats and you twitch it every now and then. And she came up and wants to work with me. Now, with that analogy, she'll probably call me up tonight and tell me to go jump in the lake and drown myself. But at the same time, if you don't rush people, I think you'll do a lot better. That's one of those things that you avoid doing. Now, do I regret it?
Go ahead.
No, you know what? I regret. I haven't told you, John. I was at Texas Book Festival down in Austin a few years ago, at a cocktail party, an invitation-only cocktail party. I turn around and there are two people in the room. One of them's the guy that was handcuffed to Lee Harvey Oswald when he was murdered by Jack Ruby. Wow. He's standing there, and over here is Ethan Hawke, the actor. And I didn't know a lot about Ethan Hawke, but okay. So I talked to the gentleman. I'm drawing a blank on his name.
He just passed away. Like
he just recently passed away. Yeah. I talked to him, and he was a delightful guy. And then I looked over, and Ethan Hawke is sitting by himself on a couch, nobody around him. And I started to go sit down, and just like you and I did that first time, started to go sit down. And I go, yeah, I bet this guy is just pounded all the time with people, and I'm going to let him have some space. To this day, I regret doing that because I think we might have opened up a relationship that would have helped me get the books out there in Hollywood. So, if you see somebody, go talk to them. Just don't go fan all of them.
The whole business, it's a people business. The difference between Hollywood, and I've done some work there too, and publishing. Hollywood is Hollywood, but publishing, New York publishing, legitimate publishing, traditional publishing, it's a people business, and it's all about relationships. Everybody knows everybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, it seems like there are a lot of players, but there really aren't. Over the course of 20 years or 30 years of a career on the publishing side, everybody works for everybody else and with everybody else and all the different authors, and to have a reputation on either side, whether it's on the publishing side or agenting side or the author side, to have a reputation as a nice guy, mm-hmm. who, just fun to be with, and it's not constantly pounding the business is good. To have a reputation as a jerk, and one time you're done. You're done. Exactly. You live out your contract and nobody will ever take you on again.
That's true. And you have to have a good reputation as soon as you get into this kind of thing. And it's not that hard to do. Just sit and visit with folks. And, if you want to talk to an agent, they're there in the bar. If they're sitting there and you strike up a conversation and somebody says, yeah, I'm an agent. Oh, well, cool. Let's talk, but don't pitch it to them right then unless they ask you for it. After I fired my agent, I had no one. I was all floating, and John kept telling me, he said, somebody will call you. You've made enough contacts, just relax. And about a week later, I got a phone call. It was a very nice lady. She said, I hear you fired your agent. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she says, well, my agency would like to talk to you about this. And she outlined a plan to promote the books. And after a while, I realized that I said, you sound like you want to be my agent. She goes, honey, I was your agent when you answered the phone. And so there you go. It worked like that, but it worked through connections and word of mouth. And it has worked ever since, and she's been great. Now, a lot of beginning writers ask me to this day. And again, I tell them I kind of back through the back door, but our agent, John, she told me she gets 3,000 query letters a month.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, 3,000. So if you're going to find an agent and a good one, you have to craft a query letter that will catch her eye that fast. The first two sentences have to be something like fishing again. You have to catch her interest or his interest right then, because they're running through those, looking for good ideas, looking for good books. And if you have a great book but a bad query letter, you're not going to get anywhere.
I taught a conference. I double teamed with an author named Marcus Saki, he's a great guy and he's a great author, really funny. And we were talking. It was so you want to write your first novel kind of thing, whatever. It was that kind of writer 101. And he has shtick that a query letter, which is the marketing letter to an agent to get them to take you on. He said that a query letter is a marketing letter. And if you should be able, even if your product is utter crap, not that it is, but even if it's utter crap, the query letter should get requests to see it. Sure. You know, and if it's not, then you're just not writing a good marketing letter.
Yeah. And it's hard to do. It really is. I recommend that people look on their, not TV Guide anymore, but when you on cable, when you look at those little slug lines about what the movie is going to be about, see if you can figure out what they're doing right there. In a line or two, they're catching your attention so that you will pick up and watch their movie. So you need a couple of lines that doesn't, don't try to describe the entire novel. Nobody wants to hear that. How many times have we been in bars and in meetings where people tell us their entire book? Yeah. And John gets this glassy look in his eye. He's very polite, but he gets this glassy look like I just died and gone to hell. And so we will listen to him, but the query letter has to give the very basic idea of what's going to happen so that you can catch people's interest and they'll pick it up. John's back with us.
Hi, John.
So actually, and I had a perfect jump in there too. We tell people all the time, like when you're pitching, if you're an author that maybe a bookstore doesn't know, if you're pitching, you should pitch a bookstore, whether it's you want to set up an event, you want them to just carry your book. Like all of those skills that you hone in that query letter will do you well the rest of your career. Because if you pitch a bookstore the same way you would pitch an agent, getting all of that information right up front, you're already doing better than a vast majority of people that are out there. So we have a couple of questions from the crowd for you guys. Marlene asks, what program or computer app thing do you guys find helps write your stories? So kind of a little bit of a technical process question there.
Word.
Yeah.
Microsoft Word.
Microsoft Word. Yeah.
I know there's a program called Scrivener, I think.
Yeah.
That I actually bought. It's cheap. I mean, it's like $70, whatever it is. And I tried it, and the learning curve was too steep, and it doesn't work the way my process does. I don't do an outline. I used to do an outline. I do a kind of a proposal as a.
You don't? No.
Point.
My character gets in trouble. Lots of bodies fall. Lots of ammunition is spent. The end. That's it. Come on.
There you go. But as I go along, if I get an idea that, we can do this later or whatever, I just drop to the bottom of the manuscript and make a note there. So when I'm finished with the manuscript, after I type the end, there's still like 30 pages of stuff I have to delete, which is the notes. But I don't do any fancy programs. And what about you?
No, I use Word, and the beauty of Word, I think that's mostly the industry standard from what I understand. But when I love it because there are times, and I'm random, guys. One time I wrote an entire chapter for a novel I was working on that had nothing to do with what I had written previously. And so I wrote this chapter, put it aside, and I'm writing along in the story. And all of a sudden I get to this point, I think, there it is. And you go back and you bring it up, cut, paste, drop it in there, and it becomes part of your manuscript. So Word's very easy to use, and I absolutely love it.
I think the subconscious is always working on these things. It happens in every book, right? Every book that you get to that weird plot point of, how do I resolve this? It's like, the helicopter in chapter 3, or it's like, it's already there, and you make it work.
It is, and I find writing easy, and I like a lot of people. We have a friend that posted on his Facebook page the other day. He said, "I've been working all day on one paragraph. If I have to work on one paragraph all day long, I'm just going to just go to the bar and drink till I can't see straight, because that would drive me crazy." Yeah. But different people write different ways.
So do you think, because you guys are both kind of well into series already and you've been doing this for a while, do you think that just kind of your brain is now kind of partly used to the process of plotting and kind of how things are all going to connect, and that's sort of why you kind of accidentally drop these things earlier in books that end up helping later?
I do. John said your subconscious is always working, but I refuse to use. I'm going to say it, but I refuse to use it. I'm not one of those seat of the pants writers, and they call them pantsers, and I just hate that phrase. But I have no idea what's going to happen from the time I put my fingers on the keyboard until words come out. So I don't know what my character is going to do. I don't know what's going to happen. I follow it along as if you were writing it. I'm reading it on my screen. I'm one of those guys that do that. Now, we have a mutual friend, Jeffrey Deaver. That makes his head explode. He just does not understand that at all. And he said, how can you write, 60, 70,000 words without knowing what the ending is? And it's like watching a movie. I'm waiting for the ending to reveal itself. That's how I work. But now, John, you outline a little bit, don't you?
I have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I know where I'm going to go. Excuse me. Right now, I'm writing the 2021 Grave book, comes out this time next year. It's called Stealth Attack. And I know what the characters need to do, the bad guys in particular. I just don't yet know why.
Okay.
It's like, okay, why is the bad guy a bad guy? What is causing him to do these things? And quite honestly, that does kind of stop the story, because you need to work that out. But I know what's going to happen is I will either be in the shower or on a long drive, and then boom, it's there.
Long drives are great.
Always happens.
Yeah, I get out and take these Texas highways. I sit on cruise, and all of a sudden it starts flowing, and I'm not really thinking about it. But I wanted to ask you, John, real quick. What is it? Why do you think Jonathan Grave is so popular? What is it that catches everyone's imagination?
Jonathan is principled. He has a strong moral code. He is capable of great violence, but he's also a philanthropist, and he brings justice. He will not tolerate injustice.
There you go.
And I think that's who doesn't want that. I have often said that. In fact, I just joined Western Writers of America, for a lot of different reasons, but I write cowboy stories that have automatic weapons that are set in modern day, and there's no hats. Well, they are hats, but they're different kinds of hats. They're ballistic. But so I think that's why. It's a Tony Hawk. I think the characters feel real to the readers, and I think that begins with the character feeling real to the writer.
Yeah, and so I think people like Sonny Hawk because he's law. He's a good guy. He's like us. He's flawed in several ways. He breaks down in the third book. Hawk's I gotta look it up. Hawk's target. Sonny. Yeah, it's over there. Sonny actually runs over, and you don't kill animals in your books. Everybody says that, but it happens in mine sometimes. Sonny runs over a cat that darts out in the road in front of him after dealing with a person who's been held hostage by a sex trafficker, and he frees this individual, and then he's driving down the road, and a cat runs out in front of him. He kills his cat, and it's the snap. John, you felt that. You were in rescue and recovery. There's that one tiny little thing that makes everything snap, and then Jonathan has to pull over and break down. He has emotion, and at the same time, he provides the retribution that we want. We all want the bad guys to see justice pretty quickly, not go through years of the court. So it happens in our books. The bad guys they reap what they sow.
And I think it's important that the reader gets confidence that if I have killed off characters that readers have come to like, but it's always, they die well, they die nobly. And I think readers need to trust the author that you're going to have an honest ride. What I want at the end of every book, people should, if I can be in their room and tell them how they should feel, they should close the book and go, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Good read. Yeah.
Okay, so Scott Montgomery asks, do you ever plan to use the left coast crime idea your agent turned down?
Is that for who? Me?
I think that's you.
I think it's you, yeah.
Oh, Scott's ahead of me. I don't. No, I can't. That one. Yeah, that would. I would love to do that. That idea. I was the crisis manager and public information officer for the Garland Independence. Yeah, that one for many years, and I dealt very closely with the police departments, the SWAT teams, and I was involved in my district pretty heavily when Columbine happened in '99, and so we all created these crisis management plans. And I wrote the first crisis management plan here in the state of Texas that was used as the basis for others many years ago. And I have always, and people are going to question this comment, I have always feared for another terrorist takeover in school. Schools are our Achilles heel, and it scares me to death. Now, schools have plans in place to deal with it. We won't get into that, but there are plans to deal with a terrorist trying to take over. My idea that my agent turned down was terrorists taking over a school, and it was what happens inside the school. There was going to be a school resource officer, a Texas Ranger inside the building, and he was going to deal with the issue from the inside of a very old school. The old schools had, they had these things underneath the stages. There's all this blank spaces, and there's. I worked in a school. There were 110 doors in that one school, 110 exterior doors. It's stunning how many doors were in there. And so, not all exterior. I misspoke. There were 110 doors, many of them outside. And so, because of that, I understood how schools work and how they defend themselves. But I pitched that to her really close to Sandy Hook, and she said the country wasn't ready for it. And so I had to back off on that idea. So I took that whole idea, took it out to West Texas, dropped it in the courthouse in my town of Ballard, Texas, which is a combination of Marfa and Alpine. And I put my Texas Ranger in the very top overlooked tower of a building that was built in the 1890s. And terrorists took over that building with a class of kids downstairs on a field trip. But Sunny Hawk was there, and I've had people describe it as Die Hard in West Texas. And so you got Sunny Hawk trapped in there, and the guys don't know he's around. That's a great question.
That's a fear in, I think, writing thrillers in general, is not so much. I think bad guys think they're good guys, and bad guys can be smart. So I mean, nobody's going to be reading my books to figure out a reason to right. a methodology to be a terrorist. But, if the cards fall in a certain way and your book drops, if you had written that book, either, and it dropped either right before or right after Sandy Hook, that's a career ruiner. Yeah. But there's a year lead time.
Oh, yeah. You don't know. I had a question. I was on a panel here in Texas, and the guy said, well, do you think you're giving terrorists ideas? And I said, yeah, hell no. They already have these ideas. These crazy people have more ideas than we can come up with. When I wrote that first crisis manual in 1999, and it dealt with kids with guns in a school, I had no idea that terrorists were going to fly airplanes into buildings. That never occurred to me. So then we had to rewrite the crisis manual to deal with that. These guys are crazy, and they will come up with something that we haven't thought of. And that's terrifying, but that's what we do as thriller writers. We try to put ourselves in that place and write a novel that can be real, but we hope to God it never is.
Right.
So how important is it for you guys? You mentioned kind of being writing buddies. How important is
guys, my whole computer froze up.
Oh.
Or yours did.
You're good. We can hear you. There you go.
There you go. So you mentioned kind of being running buddies. How important is it to have another author to bounce ideas off of, and what kind of different feedback do you get if you're trying to bounce an idea off of another author versus if you were trying to go to your agent or your editor for it?
I don't think we have ever bounced an idea off of each other ahead of time. Yeah. We'll share manuscripts after they're done. Yeah. And there will be times that I'll send Rev a manuscript with a very specific, while you're reading it, consider this, does this actually work? But I don't think we've ever discussed plotting up front, have we?
I think we might have lost him because it looks like.
Well, he hasn't changed his expression in a bit. Now, there he is.
I have no idea what we've had some thunderstorms around here today, and I think it's messing with our internet. So I'm not sure if you guys can hear me or what, but you've frozen up again, and I'm out of the loop.
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. So then how about, since we're having some connection issues, why don't you guys real quick tell me what you are working on next, and we will wrap up so that way we don't have, because I think we've lost Reavis again.
Hey, babe, would you turn that TV off in there? Something's interfering with the internet.
This is entertaining. The private conversations. Hey, baby.
Yeah. Hey, baby. Shut everything down. Something's messing with the internet. I don't know what's going on, guys, but am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Okay,
You're
so
back.
real quick,
No.
Reavis, why don't you tell us what you have got coming out next?
Okay, if you can hear me,
Yeah.
my next release is the re-release for The Rock Hole. My first novel. It comes out in October.
Which has a
And-
great cover.
and
The
with a
cover
new
is so
cover.
good.
Oh, it looks great. In introductions with Joe R. Lansdale, who's another good author friend of mine. And I tell you what, I couldn't have asked for a better introduction for that. My next novel is to be released is Laying Bones. It's the next in the Red River series. And Laying Bones comes out in early January. So you can look for it. And it has a great cover also. And it's a continuation of the Red River series. And at that point right now, I have, like I said, I have 4 or 5 manuscripts I'm working on. I hope the new Tom Bell, the look back at Tom Bell as a standalone will come out here very shortly. And another one that I'm going to pitch to my agent, I'm going to send to her, and I told John it's going to make her head explode, is a Western that came to me fully formed. I'm writing that right now. Tentatively titled The Legend of Buck Dallas, and I think it will be out in the next year. And it is across it. I look at it as Stephen King meets Larry McMurtry. If that's an explanation of that for you.
All right, and how about you, John?
Well, Hellfire just came out 2 days ago, and I'm currently, what I'm working on actively right now is the next Jonathan Grave that will come out in June of next year. It's due on September 15th, and I'm 80 pages into it. So I have a lot of work to do this summer. And then also in February or March of next year, the new series, the Crimson Phoenix series, is going to drop. And I'm very excited about that. It's a whole different world. We haven't decided what, I called it post-apocalyptic, and everybody at Kensington had a heart attack because there are no zombies. You know, it's not that kind of thing. It's like in the last Babylon kind of universe. So it's still trying to figure out how to position it, but it's a thriller, and I'm very excited about it. So for the next 2 years, I'm doing 2 books a year, which is a lot. I'm not doing 4. You know, Wortham. Reavis has always got to up me. You know, he's doing 4. I'm struggling with 2. We don't know who the audience is, so I can't say what I really think about that. So,
Oh, there you go. Thank you very much for that. I've read that manuscript, and that it had me from the opening. And it's one of those few books that you're reading, and when you get to the end, you just start, God, I wish this was longer. I wish it was a tome, because I don't want to wait another year for the next one. It's fantastic. You're going to love it.
thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Just to recap, we have been talking with Reavis Wortham about his new book, Hawk's Fury, and John Gilstrap about his new book, Hellfire. If you came in the middle of the chat, it'll be archived on Facebook later this evening. We'll also get it uploaded to the store's YouTube channel. You can order your copies. At the moment, the store is still closed to the public. We're doing curbside pickup, mail order, and phone order, so you can order on our website, which is murderbooks.com, or give us a call at 713-524-8597. We have like 40 authors coming up with virtual events in July. Reavis mentioned Joe R. It's crazy. I looked at the schedule for next week and almost started crying, but we're talking to a lot of exciting people. Reavis mentioned Joe Lansdale. We're going to be doing an event with him on July 20th, the day before his new book comes out. And he's actually going to be dropping by to socially distance, sign some stock for us. So we'll have some copies of that since he's kind of in the neighborhood. So definitely check out the calendar at murderbooks.com to see what else we've got coming up. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're glad to be able to do this, and hopefully we'll be able to get to do it in the store before long. Y'all take care.
All righty. Take care. Thanks much. Good night.